notice to committee members in compliance with committee rules. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Illinois for 5 minutes to explain the amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I introduced the U.S. Border Patrol Medical Screening Standards Act in response to the conditions I witnessed firsthand at our border in April, along with Chairwoman Rice and other members of this committee. I want to recognize and thank the chairman and committee majority staff for their months of hard work on this important legislation. I also appreciate the ranking member's willingness to engage with us on this bill, and I'm committed to continuing to look for ways to work together on these issues going forward. As a nurse, I know that proactive, consistent, and timely medical screening is essential to a public health response to the humanitarian crisis at our border. But effective medical protocols aren't in place right now. The goal of this bill is to fix that by requiring medical screening within 12 hours for everyone interdicted between ports of entry, with priority given to children. 6 children have died at the border in under a year. For a decade before, the number was 0. Our policies must change to fix this. Wilmer Jose Ramirez Vasquez was 2.5 years old. Wilmer and his mother were picked up by Customs and Border Protection, but he didn't receive medical attention until 3 days later. Wilmer died in the hospital, and his autopsy showed the toddler had parasites that were treatable if caught earlier. Juan de Leon Gutierrez was 16 years old. Juan was picked up by Border Patrol agents and sent to a federally contracted shelter. He wasn't hospitalized until 2 days after interdiction and died 9 days later. Healthcare at the border will require a broad approach, and medical screening is a big part of it. If Wilmer and Juan had received a screening within 12 hours, they may have been afforded treatment in time to save their lives. In many cases, especially pediatric cases, that timeliness makes all the difference. This is a serious bill for a serious problem, and we took a comprehensive approach to drafting it. The bill sets standards for the medical screening it requires, including medical history, current medical complaints, current medications, and more. By requiring this training, the bill provides law enforcement and staff at the border the support they need so they aren't being forced to deal with medical situations that we haven't equipped them for. In drafting this legislation, we made sure to solicit and incorporate technical assistance from the Department of Homeland Security. The final amendment in the nature of the substitute includes the department's recommendations that 1, this training be made mandatory for all personnel who are carrying out medical screening, 2, that disabilities are identified as part of the screening process, and 3, that interpretation services are documented. The amendments to this bill also incorporate a number of suggestions from the American Academy of Pediatrics. The medical situation at our border will persist as our country continues its national conversation around immigration policy. To that end, the bill also directs the Department of Homeland Security to research innovative approaches to address any capability gaps to providing medical screening. Anyone who has been to the border, including many of my colleagues on this committee, has seen how overwhelming the humanitarian situation is there. This committee and this Congress have consistently been willing to provide the Department of Homeland Security with the resources it needs, but with those resources come accountability and oversight. Lastly, I will be offering an amendment to ensure implementation of an integrated electronic health record system to be used by those caring for migrants at the border. This is a direct ask from medical officers at the Department of Homeland Security, who have identified it as a high priority barrier to providing care. We know that migrants may be transferred between different sites and components multiple times while in federal custody, and an electronic health record is essential to ensuring the information collected during those medical screenings remains accessible. This legislation is an important and sensible step forward to make sure that both migrants and border officials are not placed in situations that are unsafe. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support it. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Is there any further discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman.